So, I have always been interested in reload. After all, it's the thing which all champions have to do. Well, except for Grover, Maeve, and Shaolin. Oddly enough, Fernando and Grok still have to. I feel like many people don't know enough about reload, considering that I still frequently see them buying Deft hands, but we'll get to that later. Besides using the infamous item, there's quite a few ways to avoid or speed up reload. There's cards. A lot of them in fact. Almost every champion, except for Berk for some reason, have at least one. Heck, even Grok and Nando have them. There are also some abilities which help with reload. Most importantly, Ceres's Shadow Travel gives you back all your ammo. I'm not sure if that's a bug, but it's still pretty nice. Other skills include ultimates. Tara's ultimate gives you unlimited during it, plus full ammo after the ult. Buck's reloads on use. Willow's gives you unlimited during it, but none as regen. Kinessa's gives you unlimited, and for some reason 5 more ammo after it's done, which is really weird. What am I supposed to do with 5 ammo? I am not mentioning Grok and Makoa here, because they use a different type of attack during it, and their ammo just acts the same way as if it did, if it wasn't touched, with the Makoa hook still giving back ammo if you're using the card for it. Anyway, almost all of the reloading champions can shorten their reloads through something which on Reddit was named reload cancelling. Links below. It's something which most people probably do unconsciously. I did that for a long time too, until I actually started measuring everyone's reloads and realized in the process that, well, this is a thing. So, how it works is that while you're reloading, you wait until the reload is about 75% done. The exact time depends on the champion. Then you interrupt the reload with a skill. That makes you jump into the animation of the skill and you have a fully reloaded weapon on your hands. The only champion this doesn't work on at all is Maldumba. Trust me, I tried on every single skill over and over again for about 5 minutes without any success. But that's a good thing, because he's got the sweet benefits of Snake Toss attached to reloading. Buck is a weird fellow as well. His right click technically does work as an interrupt, but because of the nature of his reload, it barely even does anything and isn't really worth trying to interrupt on. On neither Grok nor Fernando does it work, probably because they're actually cooling down, not just reloading. Some skills the interrupt doesn't work on though. Generally anyone that does not have an animation attached to it. That includes Tara's F, Torvald's Q, and Sky's F. On Ruckus, it doesn't work on anything except for ult. Although his advance has an animation, you can shoot during it. Therefore, it wouldn't make any sense for it to interrupt the reload. Same goes for Lex's Combat Slide and Drugus' Thrusters. Seriously, if you use common sense, you can figure it out for any new champion. You can reload as a chicken, by the way, and you can reload while mounted. Not that the latter will help you in any way, but the former might. Reload speed isn't an infinitely stackable thing. It only goes up to 60%. So if you're planning to get a full Deft hands, using any card which increases your reload speed is useless. That reduces the value of the item, because if you're in a longer match without any cards, you won't be as efficient at the start, and with cards you'll be wasting credits at the end. And Willow, for example, can get up to the 60% limit even without using Deft hands. Before we start looking into champion-specific details of why Deft Hand is bad, we'll need to go find out every champion's reload time and how long it takes for them to run out of ammo. I created a spreadsheet where I wrote down all the information I gathered. The ammo usage and ammo numbers were both easy to get because they're written down in the skill descriptions, but the reload time itself took me several hours to work out. Oh, and Strix's attack speed was written down nowhere, so I had to find that out myself too. It's 0.15 seconds, by the way. And for Strix's sniper rifle, it does say in the skill description that it takes 1 second to go from one shot to another, but that's not entirely true, because you also have to scope in to get the accuracy of the weapon. So that's an extra 0.2 seconds according to my measurements. Here's the timing rule. 0 is 1 frame before the ammo count starts to disappear. The end of the timer is 1 frame before the ammo count starts to appear again. This rule was sort of iffy because sometimes it took the ammo count 3 frames to disappear, sometimes 2. However, most of the numbers I got out of it didn't have any recurring decimals, so I'm happy. With this timer, the second is divided into 60 parts, so to get only the second value, which all the other information is written down in, I divided the last 2 digits by 60. I wasn't going to put Grok and Nando into this because I was lazy, duh. But then I had to do Strix anyway because I've been postponing this video for too long, so I got the stats for those two as well. Grok does act a bit odd though, because his last tick of heat disappears way before the lightning beam stops and reload starts. Just as a sidestep, during the measuring of the times, I found that it is interesting that some champions jump very rapidly to the reload animations. You can't ever really spot that in-game though. Kinessa has 2 rows dedicated to her. That's because it's unfair to take into account only her sniper rifle or her normal left click, as they function quite differently. When showing the data, I have just made the 2 equally as important by finding their average, although it's probably much more skewed towards the sniping side. Strix has 2 rows too, for the same reasons, but because his 2 weapons act so differently, and they even have different reload times, I decided to keep the 2 rows in, even on all the graphs. So, now that we have all the info we need, I'll explain why I decided to use the variable of time until you need to reload divided by reload time, instead of just using the reload time. Let's look at the reload graph here. Everyone except for Buck has almost the same reload time, so it is very difficult to actually tell who could need deft hands. Skye has a relatively low reload, but if we look at the time she takes to deplete her ammo, we can see she's the worst of all of them. But if we combine these two, we get a graph which quite accurately represents how well that champion manages ammo. If we divide the champions into 3 groups and show the color coding on the other graphs, we can see that it's sure. Normally, the champions who spend their ammo fast and the ones who have long reload times are problematic, but it's not as clearly cut. Just as a heads up, we're looking at things from the ammo management's perspective. It's not that any of the champions at the lower end are bad at what they do, they're just not designed or intended to keep shooting all the time and reload all the time. So now, to get into specific details of champions, I was initially going to go through every champion up until Drogus, which is right below average, and I had a page of script written for it, but then I realized that it's just a waste of time and I'm better off sorting the champions into categories. The champions with over the average of my imaginary variable are well off anyway, so it's absolutely unreasonable to buy deft hands on them. For the other ones, I will give several reasons why you should consider not buying deft hands on them. Here we go. First reason, you need to be useful by picking other red cards. Victor, Leon, Bumpkin, Drogus, Tyra, Fernando. Basically the damages, plus Nando. Second, it doesn't really work on them because of a fast reload speed by default. Skye with 1.3 seconds. Third, there's several powerful cards to speed up or avoid reload completely. Literally everyone, with it probably being the best on Tyra, Leon, and Androxus. Probably Strix as well. Fourth, you normally need to reload at safe times anyway when no enemy endangers you, so why waste a freaking card on it? Skye, Lex, Kinessa, Strix kinda. Fifth, reload shortening by interrupting. Janice, Victor, and that reduces it by a lot. I recorded the fastest which I could do on Victor, and I could get the reload speed down to 1.1 seconds. That makes Victor one of the best reloaders in the game. True, it doesn't still kick him right into safety, as his time to reload speed ratio is still horrid, but it does make it a lot less reasonable to pick deft hands on him. For Janice, it isn't as noticeable when you interrupt, but it still shortens the reload to 1.3 seconds. It is probably much simpler to interrupt like this when sitting in the shooting range, being prepped for the fast finger movement, but it's still kinda cool to know and practice. Oh, and this is only the speed that I was able to get to. Perhaps it's possible to get faster? Sixth, who cares because they're terrible anyway, and some shitty card isn't going to save them. It's Skye and Kinessa. Some champions I feel like I have to talk about more personally. First, Tyra. She often gets deft-handed because she is really freaking bad at managing her ammo, but the card is really a game changer for her. Strix shouldn't really have any issues because he's with that sit and wait sort of playstyle and does a lot of damage with both his guns. I have no experience on him though at the moment of saying this, so we will see. Buck. He isn't really an issue because if you want to, you can do a shorter reload mid-fight if you're missing that tiny bit of power to finish someone off. He is the most efficient at reloading, however, when you do the full reload, but the fact that you can choose how long you want your reload to be really makes reloading not a problem for him. Both Fernando and Grok don't get almost any gain out of deft hands, although it does work on them. Why, you may ask? Because they can stop shooting right before they run out of heat and still get back all their ammo. I timed it, and Grok can get his ammo back with 1.5 seconds and Nando with 1.4 seconds without losing almost any damage ticks if you time it just right. With full deft hands, Nando gets to 0.86 seconds and Grok to 1.16 seconds, so up to only about half a second of a difference. It does barely anything. Some flank Nandos do use it though, but I'd really prefer a cauterize. Damba used to be really powerful with his snake toss, but it's not half as good anymore, so people who still buy deft hands on him don't know any better or just live in the past. Stun locking isn't a thing anymore, dudes. So I think I have broken deft hands' usefulness apart enough. If you're still not convinced, just ask literally anyone else who has played the game enough. Fun fact time, while looking at the stats I've gathered, I also noticed a couple other things. Like that projectile champions are much better at managing their ammo than hitscan champions are. Almost all the hitscan champions are terrible at it, seriously. It's probably because it's expected you miss more shots with projectile based champions, so they manage it all a bit better too. And when you look at the class specifics, the front lines seem to be best at managing their ammo. Damage and support champions are the worst, with flanks in between the two. I find that to be really odd because flanks like Sky and Lex don't really have to use more than one magazine in a fight, while most damagers do have to reload mid-fight because they damage normally more than one enemy at once. It seems to be intentional on Hyros' end because the newest damager Strix also follows that rule. I think that concludes it. Thank you guys for suffering the Stridata talk for 10 to 15 minutes.